From ancient times, when people mentioned vampires, they immediately thought of a monster who wore a cloak with a high collar all day long, acted at night, and sucked human blood. But our protagonist was not like that. He was a true otaku. His name was Stas. He did not eat or suck human blood. Instead, he was fascinated by the things humans created, especially the products from Japan. And the reason for not sucking blood was simple. Sucking human blood was something from the old days. He did not like it. Then the sunlight in the human world now was also very strong. And going to the human world also cost quite a lot of money. In addition, he was a busy man in the demon world. Probably a restaurant worker or something. But no, he was the boss of a territory in the demon world, leading a large gang. Right after he finished talking, his underlings immediately called Stas. He thought they called to report that they had bought the DVD he asked for. But it turned out they had something more interesting. It was a human girl. It seemed that she had accidentally wandered here. The underlings did not know how to deal with her, so they reported and handed her over to him. Just hearing a few words, human girl, made the young man freeze. Only after a while did he come back to his senses and hurriedly ordered his men to bring the girl directly to his room. At this moment, Stas was very worried and nervous, because this was the first time he had met a human girl. Moreover, she was Japanese. He panicked not knowing what to wear to meet her. And then he even brought out anime to show off to her, even music too. The pile of clothes was also a headache for him. Meanwhile, the girl was being taken up the elevator, surrounded by Stas's underlings drooling. While Stas was fumbling with clothes like preparing for a date, he still had not finished when his men had already brought the goods to the place. Just seeing the girl, the young man immediately kicked his underling out of the room. Brotherhood only went that far. Now there were only 2 people in the room, but Stas's heart was still pounding wildly. Outside, the underlings were discussing, asking if Stas intended to take everything for himself. But today the boss seemed different from usual. He looked just like he was in heat. While they were still discussing, suddenly a pimp appeared in this neighborhood. Some underlings went out and asked who allowed him to open here. That guy slyly said he did not know and wanted to meet the boss to ask permission. When he learned that the boss here was busy, he immediately changed his attitude, using violence to call Stas out. Meanwhile, the young man was still chatting with the girl, mainly asking about games. While talking, his underlings called for help. The young man angrily said a few words, then pretended the signal was lost to hang up. After that, he continued the conversation, but the girl reminded Stas that he should worry about his comrades more. Her gentle words together with her sparkling eyes made Stas's heart go into turmoil, arousing the vampire instinct inside him. And now Stas realized that he had fallen in love. Therefore, he swore to protect her to the end. He would never bite her white and soft neck. And also because of love, he would do whatever she asked. So now he finally got up to go save his underlings. While Stas jumped down from the window, right behind him there was a strange tree trying to climb up into his room. Seeing Stas arrive, that guy became excited. He provoked him and then attacked relentlessly, but Stas did not care and just approached. With only a light flick of his hand, he destroyed the massive vine tentacles. Then with just a simple heart-crushing strike, Stas finished the one who dared to cause trouble in his territory. Afterward, he returned to the room with his close underling. But as soon as he opened the door, a sight struck his eyes, making him unable to close his mouth. A deformed tree of that guy was wriggling in his room, then spat out a skeleton. Stas furiously rushed forward and smashed the tree apart. But the only thing he got was the set of clothes covered in slime of that girl. He regretted that before he could do anything, she was already reduced to a skeleton. But then his underling pointed toward the bed. That girl was still there, but in a naked state. Both of them hesitated. Could it be someone else, or maybe the tree only chewed her clothes? At this moment, Stas approached the girl and said that he no longer felt desire from her. The underling quickly realized the one in front of them had died and turned into a ghost. Looking at the skull made sorrow rise in his heart. Stas firmly made a bold decision that he would resurrect her, no matter what it took. Turns out the young man was not thinking of any method, but just sitting there reading manga. At first he was as interested in this girl as possible, but now he was completely ignoring her. Moreover, he was even irritated with her. Up to now, Stas still did not even know her name, so he asked. This girl's name was Yanagi Fayumi. The girl still could not believe that Stas really intended to save her, so she asked again to be sure. Yet the answer she got was that the young man would rely on manga to save her. So Fayumi had no choice but to find her own way. Suddenly she remembered something. It turned out she remembered the way to get here. After that, Fayumi immediately led Stas along. When they arrived, Stas was astonished to see it. This was the highest skin of spatial magic. This was the first time he had ever seen it. After saying that, Fayumi intended to go into it alone. But Stas stopped her. At first he did not intend to go, but seeing it, he would not return empty-handed. Therefore he decided to go with her. But the main reason was still the games and music of the human world. But before going, he had to check first. Then Stas took Fayumi to a cafe. The owner here was a girl with 3 eyes and her beast was the same. That person's name was Sadie. Stas wanted to ask her to check if Fayumi was able to return to the human world. After that, she and the beast combined together, using clairvoyance, emitting a dazzling light. After checking, it was confirmed that Fayumi was fine to go to the human world but should not stay too long. Then when they knew Stas would also go there, everyone panicked. If he went, then everything would be in chaos because no one would watch over this territory. Luckily at that moment Deku brought a new recruit who could transform into him. So the matter was resolved and everyone held a farewell party for Stas before his departure. The next day both were fully prepared to go to the human world, but Stas looked so excited that he forgot the main purpose. After both stepped through the door, the place they arrived at was Fayumi's room. Stas was somewhat disappointed because seeing it was so simple he thought she was imprisoned. After asking about Fayumi's daily life, he decided to go to her school to see the situation. As both went down the stairs, they met Fayumi's father. He immediately questioned where she had been yesterday, who was the guy she brought home, and why she had not gone to school yesterday. Fayumi was bewildered, not knowing how to answer, so Stas sprayed something directly into her father's face, making him completely change his attitude, then go to work right away. It turned out that drug was a substance secreted from Stas's slime that could control humans, but it had no effect on demons. After that, both went outside to prepare to go to school. Stas reminded her that since he was a demon, he had to be careful not to draw attention when walking outside. But this young man's eyes lit up at everything he saw, and he pulled out a camera, snapping pictures everywhere. Fayumi reminded him that doing so could expose him. Then Stas again pulled out that spray bottle and sprayed it all over the places he had just messed with. Meanwhile, in the demon world, the new underling named Yoshida was trying hard to imitate Stas to impersonate him more convincingly. Back to Fayumi, she was now sitting in class. Her life seemed normal. But when talking, she realized everyone's memories seemed to be scrambled. That made her feel distant from everyone. So afterward she cried and told Stas, but he comforted her that thanks to the spray bottles everything was still under control. Without them, would she rather tell everyone that she had died and was now a ghost? But Fayumi told Stas to restore everyone to normal, because if it kept being like this, she would rather disappear. Stas spoke as if agreeing with her disappearing, then he told her to look at her own body. At that moment Fayumi realized her legs had disappeared. Her arms too. This was normal for low-level demons when in the human world. Although earlier the check had said she was fine, but Sadie had also warned that Fayumi must not stay too long. After that, Stas intended to leave, letting Fayumi fulfill her wish of disappearing, but now she begged him, pleaded with him because she had spoken wrongly earlier. Seeing that, Stas bit his own finger, letting it bleed, then gave it to her to lick. The scene when she received blood from him was somewhat strange. Thanks to the magic in Stas's blood, it helped her recover her limbs. Therefore, from now until she was resurrected, he would be her blood bank. After that, Stas left, leaving Fayumi alone to recover by herself. As he walked, he thought back on his own words, and then Stas decided that if he managed to save her, he would drain Fayumi completely dry, turning her into a mummy. Though that was just a thought. Who knew if he would actually do it? Even though this place was full of humans, he did not feel the same stirring and fluttering as when he first met Fayumi. Perhaps she had something special for Stas, so he had to find a proper way to resurrect her first. After Fayumi regained her clarity, Stas intended to take her back to the demon world. Just as they returned to Fayumi's room, both were surprised to see some girl jumping around on the bed. It turned out her name was Belle, the owner of that gate and also the one with the highest spatial magic. Stas assumed she had deliberately placed the spatial gate at his place to lure him here and then seize his territory. But in fact, Belle had no such intention. She simply wanted to travel to many places to explore and hunt for treasure. And now she was here to demand money from Stas. That was because he had gone through the gate without asking her permission. The fee for one person passing through was 30,000 yen, for two people 60,000. Hearing that, Stas found it too much, so he wanted to skip out. So she threatened to sell the information that he was not in his territory to other bosses to come seize it. Seeing that, Stas was about to attack, but Belle teleported him straight out to the street. Then she took the chance to scare Fayumi. Normally an ordinary person would run in fear, but Fayumi was so timid she just stood trembling. As for Stas, he was walking trying to find his way home when Belle appeared to tease him. He punched and kicked at the door frames where she appeared, but with spatial powers she kept appearing and disappearing, making him unable to land a hit. Then Belle suddenly appeared behind him with a gun and Fayumi was being held hostage. Then she ordered him to go down to the basement of a house to bring something back here, while Fayumi was left to sit and hear her tell a secret that only girls knew. Meanwhile, Stas had gone down and was quite surprised to see that in the human world there was a place belonging to demons. Then the shop owner led him into a room. The story Belle intended to tell Fayumi was that she could not just leave the gate anywhere, because it had been stolen and brought here. That was why she could not put it away. So if she found the one who did it, Belle would teach him a lesson by turning him into her slave. As for Stas, the shop owner showed him underwear, then while he was distracted he punched him and challenged him to a fight. Stas also recognized this guy, seeing that the man lunged to attack again, but now his whole body seemed immobilized. Then with just a gentle punch, Stas sent him flying and left him lying on the floor. Afterward, he would bring the underwear back to Belle, but she suddenly appeared saying she did not need it. It turned out what she wanted was someone with great power, so all along she had just been testing him. And now Belle seemed to be close with Fayumi. When she learned Stas intended to find a way to resurrect her, she said there was a book written about it called the Resurrection Book. But she had already sold it. To whom she did not remember, but she only recalled that the place it was sold was in the Western Demon World. In the Western Demon World, the leader there was a werewolf. He and his men always followed one principle. When words were powerless, violence prevailed. Stas was telling everyone about the way to go there, but the other three did not seem to care. Belle said that Stas was a friend of the werewolf, so asking would be easy. But that was from long ago. Now both were bosses of different territories, so it was a bit troublesome. Stas planned to use Belle to get there, but she refused. Angry, he rushed to punch her, but Belle used her power to counter the punch and sent him back to the demon world. Being a boss yet having to suffer such humiliation made Stas furious. He decided to personally lead his men to the Western Demon World. Deku's duty was to call a taxi. It turned out the taxis here were carts pulled by two monsters. These things ran extremely fast, but counted money extremely slowly. After everything was set, everyone got on. Fayumi seemed unaccustomed, so she was a bit nauseous. Sadie's three-eyed beast feared it would be covered entirely in her vomit. Stas ordered it to use its eyes to see the road and avoid the territories of other bosses, but it refused, so he threatened to let it bathe in vomit. Seeing that, it became scared and finally used its clairvoyance to see the road. Suddenly it noticed that there was someone walking ahead and the car was about to crash into him. Coincidentally, it was none other than the wolf boss of the Western Demon Realm and his underlings. Their group also intended to take a taxi, but seeing the car rushing toward them without any sign of stopping, that boss dashed forward and split the car in half. Luckily, Stas managed to carry everyone up and jump. Afterward, the two bosses clenched their fists and charged at each other. It seemed like they would greet with punches, but unexpectedly it was just a heartfelt handshake. The underlings were astonished since they had never seen their boss so cheerful. Without wasting words, Stas immediately mentioned what he needed help with, which was to find the Resurrection Book. But this werewolf would not work for free, so Stas decided to follow the old way. The two would compete with each other. If Stas won, then the wolf must help him find the book. But if the wolf won, then Stas would give him Fayumi. Seeing that, the wolf approached Fayumi to check, even though she was not his type. If given, then only a fool would refuse. What seemed like a serious competition turned out to be bowling. In that game, Stas was confident he would definitely win. His clan specialized in long-range magic, so he could easily control the bowling ball to knock everything down, while the wolf's clan with close-range body enhancement magic would be at a disadvantage. But a vampire's calculation could not beat fate's. The wolf invited Stas to fight in boxing. It sounded like an unfair match leaning against Stas, but because of Fayumi he would not lose. At this time on the ring, the wolf kept waiting without seeing Stas. Instead, Fayumi appeared in a swimsuit with the task of holding the sign. The moment the wolf saw her, he had a nosebleed, exactly like Stas's best friend, climaxing with just a glance. The wolf found Fayumi so cute, like a tiny rabbit, making him want to serve time. So both of them became even more determined to win. As soon as the match started, the two charged at each other with fierce punches. But physical strength was the wolf's advantage, so only after a short while he landed a knockout punch on Stas. Fortunately, Stas still stood up at the last second thanks to vampire regeneration. Seeing that, the wolf intended to punch him until he could not recover anymore, then rushed in, striking continuously. Stas's companions worried that he would soon run out of magic and die in the ring. But an unexpected thing happened. After a series of punches, the wolf suddenly faltered at the finishing blow, looking as if he was about to collapse. Then he realized that there was a vampire fang embedded in his shoulder. It turned out right from the beginning Stas had bitten him once, and that fang was draining his magic power. The more the wolf attacked, the more magic he lost, meaning all the damage Stas received was actually zero, while the wolf was gradually exhausted. Taking that chance, Stas rushed forward, delivered a punch, and finished with a decisive blow that floored the wolf. That move shocked everyone so much that even the referee forgot to count. Fortunately, the wolf still managed to hold on. He then pulled out his trump card, transforming into werewolf form to fight seriously with Stas. But before showing real fists, he used his mouth first. The wolf's trash-talking skill enraged Stas to the point he almost used his heart-crushing ultimate move. But the wolf kept talking, angering Stas even more. Luckily, Fayumi stepped up and slapped him once to wake him up. Otherwise, a true boss would have been killed. Then she told the two that since they were friends, they should not fight because of her, and covered her face crying. At that crucial moment, Belle appeared, opened a spatial gate, and transported everyone elsewhere where they could talk easier. At another place, Stas and the wolf realized the one behind everything was Belle. She was the one who said the book was there, and also the one who switched the bowling match into boxing. Afterward, she appeared and handed Stas the book. It turned out she had kept it all along and lied to him. They all opened it to study, but only after a few seconds they all complained the same thing, that they understood nothing. Belle also took it back and tried reading, but its contents were all nonsense and chaotic. The three-eyed beast guessed that the book was written in code. Their task was to find keywords and arrange them, or find someone to decode. The fastest solver would certainly be the author of this book. But when Stas saw the author's name, he froze. It turned out the author was Stas's older brother. His name was Brass, a noble demon living in the land above the demon realm called Upper Demon. Everyone felt relieved since it was someone Stas knew. But mentioning his brother's name made him tremble. Meeting his brother would surely be something only Stas could handle. Because that place was Upper Demon, reserved only for noble and high-class demons. Ordinary demons were not allowed to enter. But Stas hesitated and did not want to go. Seeing that, the wolf grew irritated at his friend's half-hearted determination. Just a moment ago he was so full of bravado, even almost killed his friend over a girl, and now he trembled in fear before his useless brother. Hearing this, Stas reluctantly agreed, accepting that he would go there. At this moment it was Belle's turn to refuse to take him there, once again leaving it to the wolf. He shouted at Belle, making her unable to utter anything except agree. The underlings and Fayumi seeing this froze in awe, because this guy was too cool. Belle had just started creating the portal, not even fully connected, when the wolf already kicked his friend, flying straight into it. But unfortunately the place Stas ended up was Belle's own room. After those two left, the wolf together with his underlings went shopping for food and clothes for Fayumi, while Stas also finished bathing in Belle's room. Afterward it was her turn to bathe. But Stas felt something strange, as if Belle had some kind of scheme against him. On the wolf's side, the three-eyed beast wondered why the wolf, who also belonged to the upper-class demons, had left the Upper Demon. But in fact he was a half-breed, a product of a werewolf and a strange demon. That was the reason he was expelled. Hearing that the three-eyed beast made up a story that the abandoned half-breed werewolf sought to conquer territories and become an upper-class demon so that his parents would accept him. Fayumi, listening to that fabricated story, was touched and vowed to support the wolf wholeheartedly. On Stas's side, after Belle finished bathing, she dressed revealingly and seduced Stas. Seeing that he panicked, quickly stepped back to keep distance, telling her to speak the truth about what she wanted. Seeing that Belle spoke honestly, she said she felt a vast power inside him being suppressed, and she wanted to see it. But unfortunately that power had been sealed by his brother. Mentioning his brother brought back his terrifying childhood experiences that left Stas stunned. Belle called him repeatedly until he came to. When asked why his magic had been sealed, he said his brother had tried to kill him to take that power. Every kind of poison or bizarre experiment his brother conceived he tested on Stas, until one day he declared the experiment successful and shot him in the heart to restrain his power. And that bullet could only be removed by Brass. Turning back while talking, he saw Belle ordering food on the phone, making Stas's eyes light up with surprise as he eagerly asked what it was and borrowed it to play. Belle realized Stas was an outdated fool, and perhaps the one who stole her magic was not him. Although he had great power, if he could not use it then it was not dangerous. But still Belle truly wanted to see that power. She wanted to explore it because she was a true treasure hunter. Afterward at dinner, Belle broadened Stas's horizons, letting him taste sushi. The first time trying it he was a bit bewildered. Stas even thought it would move on a conveyor belt. After eating one piece, Stas immediately judged Belle as a good person, evaluating too fast just because of food. On the wolf's side they were also eating, but Fayumi was so worried she chewed on the tablecloth. And then suddenly she collapsed to sleep. So the wolf had to carry her to bed, but felt something strange behind his back. Then the three-eyed beast panicked when seeing Fayumi's legs gradually disappearing. The next day Belle brought Stas to the castle, but it was still very far away. Only after watching him go did she feel reassured to vanish. Afterward Stas suddenly moved stealthily, since it would be terrible if he was discovered by his brother and another person. Just as he said that, an axe flew from somewhere. It turned out to be his younger sister named Liz. Meanwhile the wolf was rushing, carrying Fayumi on his back, searching for someone to treat her. There was one person who knew very well the body of demons. Though not very trustworthy, he could provide them some information. He was a madman in the demon world science field. His name was Franken. This one truly insane. While treating a loser he kept complaining, and then handed him a bomb, a permanent vacation ticket. On Stas's side he was struggling against the battle axe of his younger sister, not knowing why she hated him so much, even refusing to acknowledge him as her brother at all. It turned out to be because Stas had dared to insult their eldest brother, the one Liz admired greatly, and so she had long awaited this day, the day she could use her axe to properly condemn him. After saying that, she swung the axe down, creating a magic array that summoned a giant fist which punched Stas straight down into one of the worst prisons in the demon world. This place was called Liz's Toy Box. Going to see his brother to ask about resurrection magic and retrieve the bullet now seemed nearly impossible for Stas. At this time the wolf had already managed to bring Fayumi to Franken for examination, while Stas was desperately trying to break the shackle, but it would not even bend, let alone break. Then the button on the wall caught his attention. The surrounding prisoners urged him to press it. As soon as he did so, they burst into gleeful laughter. The wall behind the cell slowly opened up, revealing the arena where prisoners challenged the prison's gladiators for the right to freedom. Those gladiators were extremely formidable, strong enough that even a boss like Stas was beaten mercilessly without landing a blow. After the fight, they carried his body back and threw him into the cell again. At this rate, he would probably die here before even managing to resurrect Fayumi. As for Fayumi, Franken was examining her thoroughly. He said that within her body, besides the power of demons, there also existed the power of another kind of demon, specifically that of vampires. Could it be that Stas had already devoured her? The wolf and the three-eyed beast were confused, not knowing if Fayumi's body was male or female, but in reality she simply carried vampire magic within her. Normally, each type of demon absorbed demonic energy from the demon world and generated their own unique type of power. But in Fayumi's case, she had two sources of demonic power inside her. They mixed together, which caused her legs to disappear. Simply put, it was an overload, because with a normal demon's body the power of vampires was too great. But one strange thing was that Fayumi was actually able to absorb that power. If handled correctly, she might even be able to manipulate vampire powers herself. Back to Stas, he kept repeatedly challenging the zombie gladiators while Liz casually drank her tea. When suddenly his brother Braz appeared, he realized that his sister was hiding something. After asking, he learned that there was an intruder, but instead of killing him, Liz had thrown him into prison. Braz was very puzzled why she would do that and kept pressing her. When suddenly one of the zombies came in to report that the new prisoner was incredibly stubborn. No matter how much they beat him, he refused to give up. Hearing that, Braz became curious and wanted to go see for himself. Meanwhile, the wolf could not believe that the way to save Fayumi was to kill Stas. Simply put, Fayumi was now in a ghost state. She could become a vampire if she consumed the very one who gave her that power. But the more he heard, the angrier the wolf grew. Grabbing Franken by the collar, he demanded answers. If they did that, Stas would die without his magic. But Franken argued that Stas would still live on within Fayumi. Back at Stas's side, his brother had arrived to see him. Stas was on the verge of death after being beaten 10 times. Seeing that, Braz immediately shot him. But the bullets were magic bullets. They restored his demonic power. Although they caused damage, his vampire body would heal soon enough. The zombies trembled in fear upon realizing that the one they had been beating through 10 matches was the brother of their two masters. As for Stas, after pulling out the resurrection book, he asked about its contents. On the wolf's side, he was troubled, not knowing who to choose. When Belle appeared, she said that Franken had not told the whole truth. There were still many other ways to save Fayumi. Just hearing that made the wolf furious. He struck Franken to the ground and forced him to reveal the truth or else be beaten to a pulp. Meanwhile, Stas was refused by Braz when asking for an explanation of the book's content. The reason being what benefit Braz would gain from telling him. But listening to their conversation, one could see that he was not as cruel and evil as Stas had described. Seeing Braz happily chatting with Liz made her jealous. She lashed out in anger, burning 2 zombies to ashes. She said that since Stas could not defeat demons, she would not acknowledge him as an upper-class demon like them. But Braz objected because the blood flowing in Stas's veins was pure vampire blood, which meant Stas was stronger than her. Though that was also wrong since his power had only been sealed, and if released it would surpass Liz many times over. Hearing that, the girl grew furious and attacked the 2 of them. Liz thought that if Stas left, Braz would pay more attention to her. But never once did he truly notice her. He would rather look through Stas's old photos, not even knowing what his own little sister liked or disliked. There was an undeniable bias here. Stas said that just because of such ridiculous reasons his sister had taken action, throwing him straight into the prison. Liz argued that he could not understand her feelings. But then, did Liz ever understand Stas's feelings? After that, Braz agreed to comply with Stas's request, but in return he also had something to ask of him. On the other side, the wolf finally forced Franken to reveal the truth. It turned out he had deliberately said those things for his own purposes. He had in fact created a monster, and coincidentally that was also the matter Braz wanted to ask Stas about. 3 days earlier in the demon world, an artificial demon named Akim had been created. It was a work crafted by Franken himself, stitching together the body parts of other demons to create a super demon. Afterwards, it escaped from the research cage and declared it wanted to find powerful body parts that suited it. Before Franken could stop it, the creature had already used spatial magic and vanished. Therefore, both the wolf and Stas were tasked with capturing this artificial demon. Then Braz recounted that when Stas was a child, he had possessed an immense source of magical power. He could even compress a giant boulder with a 5-meter radius into the size of a marble. But the aftermath of each use was that Stas would faint, and if this continued, he could die at any moment. To prevent that, Braz had to shoot a bullet straight into his heart to suppress Stas's power. But now Braz believed that Stas had the ability to control that power and use it to eliminate the artificial demon. With his sealed power now released, Stas could easily blow away the two zombies who had originally beaten him to a pulp. Stas felt joy in regaining his strength. The artificial being was the perfect opponent to test the power that had been sealed for so long. His brother Braz hoped he could succeed in defeating it. Afterwards, Braz would tell Stas the way to resurrect the living. At this time, the wolf was already confronting that troublesome artificial being, which continuously attacked him using a spatial ring. The wolf immediately countered, breaking its arm, yet somehow it still managed to use the ring to blast him into the wall. Its limbs were nothing more than decorative parts, controlled by magic rather than bones or nerves. Its real body was a ghost controlling this corpse. The wolf had no other choice but to transform into his wolf form to go all out against it, though he only had 3 minutes in that transformation. Meanwhile, Belle and Franken were having their own secret conversation. Belle knew Franken was waiting for the wolf to lose so he could repair Adumi's toy without interference. Through her observations, Belle also clearly knew Franken was aware that the artificial being Akim could use spatial magic. She demanded that Franken spill everything he knew immediately. Before the wolf's time ran out, he managed to rip Akim into 3 pieces, but of course that attack had no effect. Akim quickly gathered the scattered body parts and reassembled himself. Stas appeared just as the wolf's transformation time ended and took over the fight. The 2 young men, upon meeting, immediately shoved Akim aside and started quarreling loudly. Akim felt insulted and instantly attacked the 2 of them. Belle opened a huge screen for Adumi and the ferret to watch the wolf's battle. She was slightly puzzled as to why the wolf had returned to human form sooner than expected. Stas showed off a few moves, and the wolf then trusted him enough to hand Akim over to him. On his own, Stas could handle this troublesome guy. Their battle shook heaven and earth. Stas, acting all flashy anime style, tried to imitate Son Goku's move to blow Akim away. But before he could even land a hit, Akim struck him down in one blow, sending him rolling across the ground. With all his showy tricks, Stas was only worthy of being called a third-rate warrior. The words of this patchwork chicken hot pot bastard truly infuriated Stas. That K move belonged to the strongest man in the world whom he respected. Akim had no right to insult it. Stas swore to kill him with the ultimate technique created by the very man Akim called third-rate. Just hearing that made Akim's whole body tremble with excitement, his chest sprouting a mouth as his body transformed. Stas's power was stronger than Braz had imagined. He was worthy of being the guillotine of enemies. Seeing the torrents of power surging around his body already made it clear who would win this battle. In no time at all, Stas shredded Akim's body into hundreds of pieces before he could even blink. Akim had used up all the magic in his body and had no intention of fighting further. But Stas refused to allow it, forcing him to stand and continue the fight. Stas would make him die under his signature move. He raised his hand and crushed Akim's heart to dust. The stitched-up freak quickly ground into rubble. After the battle ended, the wolf suddenly came looking for Stas to fight again. Stas had no idea that Belle had used spatial magic to gather Akim's body parts for Franken before he could destroy them completely. In truth, Akim's spatial powers were just an imitation. Belle's were the genuine article. Belle wanted to know which demon Franken had used to create Akim. Before that, when Franken's research had hit a dead end, he couldn't find any part to hold Akim's body together, as they kept falling apart uncontrollably. At that moment, he received a gift from a mysterious person. Inside the box was the body of a spatial magic user. Belle wanted to find the name of the one who had stolen her magic, but Franken knew nothing. At that moment, Braz and Liz appeared. He came to announce that Franken and Akim would face justice for disturbing the peace of the demon world. Liz had long desired to execute the 2, but this time Braz was only there to issue a warning. The moment she heard the order, Liz immediately rushed forward to give them a punishment blow. Meanwhile, the wolf and Stas were still going at each other endlessly, with the wolf completely beaten to a pulp by Stas. Since the day he was born, the wolf had always fought for Fayumi, but Stas never once saw where he was fighting for her. The wolf said nothing, only laughed mockingly. The day Stas fell from the sky, the first person he met was the wolf, who tied him up and interrogated him about his ancestors 18 generations back just to extort money. Unfortunately, Stas was dirt poor. The wolf suggested they fight, and if Stas lost, he would become his underling. Strangely, after only a few blows, Stas gave up. The wolf was furious that his opponent wouldn't fight seriously. Clearly, this guy falling from the sky meant Stas was a high-ranking demon, yet this so-called high-ranking demon surrendered so easily. Stas did so because he didn't want to kill the wolf. The wolf always thought himself strong, and even as a half-blood, he never felt much difference, yet Stas's words made him feel pitied, weak, and fragile. Even with Stas's powers sealed, the wolf wasn't worthy of fighting him. The wolf accepted the result of this battle and turned his back to leave. swearing that next time he would force Stas to fight for real. This brotherly scene was witnessed entirely by Stas's brother Braz, who never expected Stas to even have friends, Bel included. Stas looked at the two of them with irritation, wanting nothing more than to drive them away. Braz had appeared here because of his promise to Stas regarding resurrecting humans. Yamajiro was eagerly waiting for Stas to make a mistake and fail to arrive on time so he could blacklist him. Who could have expected that just as he was bad-mouthing him, the protagonist himself appeared and heard everything. Stas instantly snatched Yamajiro's bottle of pure magic and downed it in one gulp. He brought Braz here to discuss resurrecting Fayumi, but his brother was only focused on flirting, stroking her hair and touching her face. The sight made Stas boil with rage, and he immediately stepped in to warn Braz not to lay a hand on his girl. Braz challenged Stas, asking what he could do to save Fayumi without him. Stas's method was to become her blood bank until she could be resurrected. The moment Fayumi tasted Stas's blood, she fainted into ecstasy like a pangolin. This method worked, but was only a temporary solution. Braz led them to the place that held Fayumi's body, the place where they first met her, and where Stas lost that person. That place was none other than where Stas's underlings gathered. Braz could not believe his younger brother was cavorting with that rabble. While Braz's attention was elsewhere, Bel warned Stas about the danger posed by his brother. Earlier Braz had said a few things that made Bel take notice. He knew how important Fayumi was to Stas. Certainly Bel's expression then had looked very blank. Stas advised her not to worry excessively. He understood his brother better than anyone. Bel asked Stas to give Fayumi a bell. If Fayumi rang it 3 times, Bel would come. Stas returned and handed Braz Fayumi's restored bones to use for the resurrection. Braz produced a gun and insisted on stripping her naked to make the job easier. Stas was extremely suspicious of his perverted brother. If Braz crossed a line, Stas would not hesitate to act. Braz wanted to sample Fayumi's magic and fully restore her by transferring her soul into a completely regenerated body. But they still needed to test the soul. While Fayumi was half awake, Stas lifted her shirt without hesitation so Braz could take samples. Liz was left speechless at her 2 pervy brothers. After obtaining the samples, Braz returned home to study further. Stas would simply continue as Fayumi's blood bank until she was resurrected. Who could have guessed Braz was secretly scheming to take Stas's power once Stas became a full vampire. Liz was allowed to stay with Stas. When the two returned, Fayumi had, without them noticing, become a worker at the eatery. She had cooked human world food for everyone. In life, because she had no mother, Fayumi had cooked every day. She made 2 extra servings of egg fried rice for Liz and Stas. Liz ate while sniffling and crying. It turned out Stas's family situation was similar. Their parents had died when they were young. Stas was genuinely straight-laced. After eating, he didn't know how to flatter a wife or anything. Fayumi thought her cooking had been criticized and was heartbroken. But luckily Liz knew to compliment her a few kind words. The noisy scene was oddly peaceful. Earlier Braz had given Liz a ticket back to Upper Demon. Braz would not let Liz return to Upper Demon until she called for it. He planned to spend all his time in the lab again. Braz needed Liz to keep an eye on Stas and ensure he didn't interfere. Missing home, Liz kept sobbing but insisted she would not go back. Liz realized she was not a good little sister and couldn't stay there. Stas decided to lead his sister toward a life of treasured hobbies, and he succeeded. Liz officially became even more addicted to anime than he was. The upper-class life of their incompetent older brother turned out not to be so bad. Afterwards, Fayumi dragged Liz to bathe with her. It was the first time Liz had been cared for like that. Everyone had always feared Liz and her brother. Fayumi comforted this innocent girl with a few words. After they finished bathing, Stas and his friends still hadn't finished grinding games. They figured it was best to sleep early and wait for the gods to arrive. That day was perhaps Liz's happiest. She had always been alone. That night when Liz woke up, she could not find Fayumi, only a note left behind asking everyone not to look for her. They had no idea a blonde youth had carried her away. An emergency meeting was held. Liz was sure Fayumi had not run off. She had previously said she wanted to stay by Liz's side. Stas also had a bad feeling that Liz's disappearance was nonsense. Their older brother crushed the glass in his hand in fury. Stas felt deeply guilty. Because of him, Liz had been taken alive. When she was about to vanish, he had not been by her side. Everyone consoled Stas briefly. What they needed to do now was search every corner of the city for Fayumi by any means. If they failed, Stas vowed to use his power to blow this world apart. Stas's underlings immediately scattered to search for Fayumi. Liz suddenly told Stas that perhaps Braz knew where Fayumi was, because when Braz extracted Fayumi's magic with that device, he had attached a tracking device onto her body. Liz hadn't said anything because Braz forbade her to, and Stas told Liz to return to the Upper Demon world and contact him again by phone, saying that if that Braz dared to make a move, Stas would deal with it. Stas promised to give Liz all the anime, manga, and games if she helped him find Fayumi, while in reality, Fayumi only wanted a doll. Liz tore up the ticket Braz had given her, and immediately a winged monster came and carried her away. At that exact moment, Stas's underlings called to report that earlier that morning someone had seen a suspicious stranger loitering around their place. They had sketched the man's face and sent it to Stas, and that man was heading toward the southern region of the demon world. Liz rode the bird toward the upper demon world, but when she reached the gate, she was blocked by the guards who refused to let her in. At that moment, upper demon Burrows came out to escort her into the castle, and since their superior said so, the guards did not dare to protest further. Liz hadn't expected Burrows herself to come out to greet her. Burrows was currently working with the goal of maintaining peace in the upper demon world. She wanted to meet Braz, but he had always brushed her off, and now she finally had an official reason to go see him and lock up that bespectacled man with her special power. The king of Acropolis, Liz Soy Dai, very much wanted to meet him once, though Liz couldn't understand why that scum wanted to meet Braz, the very man who had robbed them of their parents. Soon, they arrived at Braz's castle. Burrows pressed the doorbell over and over, but that guy refused to show up, making her restless. She kept pressing non-stop and warned not to let her go as far as assaulting his cute little sister. Braz spoke through the camera. Liz intended to advise him not to open the door, but Burrows blocked her mouth, and upon seeing that, Braz opened the door to let her in. The moment Burrows saw Braz, she took out a dog chain and locked it around his neck, declaring that as long as he wore that collar, he was forbidden from using any magic, and if he tried, he would die. This pervert, however, did not follow the plan and even said he was ready to be her pet, shocking Burrows so much she almost collapsed in disbelief. Braz then invited Burrows to a private place to have a more convenient talk. He wasn't angry at Liz for disobeying him and entrusted her with the task of looking after the house. After Braz left, Liz immediately called Stas, crying because it was precisely her return that led to Stas being captured. Liz then went to the surveillance orb to check where Fayumi was heading, but it was useless. Fayumi was in a rather dark place she couldn't identify. At that very moment, a strange guy came to bother Stas. Stas showed him the picture, asking about the blonde man he was searching for. The guy thought Stas was soft and acted cocky, but Stas smacked him once and instantly made him behave. Although he didn't know anything, he was sure his boss knew everything. Stas wasn't worried about him trying anything after all. He could easily blow him to the other world. The otter then led Stas to a house that looked quite imposing. Its owner was a snowman, so the house was frozen all year round, and even the owner was shivering in the cold. The otter's name was Sabao. Stas showed the snowman the photo of the blonde man, and the snowman recognized him and even knew where he lived. However, he didn't think Stas could reach that place, since it was located deep inside a dimensional high point, one of the 7 wonders of the demon world. No one had ever managed to enter it. He suggested Stas pray that Nell hadn't gone too far away. At that time, Nell was at a ramen shop, eating to his fill, when he suddenly remembered that Fayumi must be hungry too. Nell ordered another bowl of ramen and used magic to send it into the dimension for Fayumi. The shop owner, seeing the bowl vanish, became furious, demanding compensation and threatening to call the police to throw him in jail if he didn't pay up. Nell had thought the man would be impressed by magic instead. Having no choice, Nell reached into the dimensional space to retrieve the bowl and return it to the owner. Fayumi absolutely refused to give back the bowl, and the two struggled over it endlessly. Nell pulled so hard that he dragged Fayumi out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Fayumi rang the bell Belle had given her, and since she emerged outside, both Liz and Belle simultaneously detected Fayumi's trace. Nell suddenly had a bad feeling and immediately ran away, and sure enough, the fierce elder sister appeared and gave him a kick right between the legs. Belle had come to question her younger brother for capturing Fayumi, since Fayumi was her acquaintance and she couldn't allow him to lay hands on her. Of course, it had to be trouble before he showed his face before. When she sent him messages several times, he never even replied. Ever since his sister left home, he had always had to endure his mother's wrath and serve as her errand boy. Belle herself didn't understand why her mother had targeted Fayumi either. At that moment, Stas rushed in to settle the score with both siblings. Nell sighed in annoyance, not knowing how he would explain to his mother about Fayumi being snatched away by this guy. Belle decided to protect her younger brother and told him to run. With Belle's appearance, Stas thought she was the mastermind. Nell immediately escaped into the dimensional room where Fayumi was and stayed rooted there. Just when Stas tried to grab Nell's scarf, it suddenly moved on its own. It turned out Nell was controlling the scarf from inside. Belle took the chance to try to trap Stas, but to her surprise, he could fly up into the sky and evade her attack. When he soared up to chase after the scarf, Belle shot him twice, knocking him down unconscious. When Stas woke up, he was already inside Belle's dimension. Belle then explained that this matter had nothing to do with her. Stas accused Belle of obstructing him and interfering with Braz's plan to resurrect Fiamme. Hearing this, Belle's heart sank heavily. Was she not good enough to him? At this moment, Stas admitted that he regarded Fiamme as a collectible, a super rare item that could not be replaced. Hearing these words, Belle, the fiery tigress, instantly flew into a rage. She could not accept such a viewpoint, and the two immediately clashed. Belle declared that if Stas won, she would take him to Fiamme. This foolish vampire needed to be taught a lesson. Stas couldn't understand what he had said wrong to make this fiery woman so angry. Meanwhile, Fiamme had been taken by Nell to a safe resting place. Belle deployed her spatial power, enclosing herself in a dice-shaped construct and attacking all around him. While Stas was distracted, she suddenly emerged and shot at him several times. With the fragments of space surrounding him and not knowing from where Belle would emerge, Stas was completely on the defensive and got riddled with shots that tore his clothes. Suddenly, Belle came out again and engaged him directly. She advised him to give up, just like last time. Of course, Stas now was completely different from before. If Belle could turn her magic into matter, so could he. Stas manifested a hand that grabbed Belle tightly, refusing to let go. If she didn't give up, he would blow away her lower half. At that moment, while he was distracted, Belle retrieved her dice and hid inside, even abandoning her clothes to escape. By the time he realized it, it was too late, and she had to beg Stas to return them. Fiamme was being taken by Nell to float around in the sky, though no one knew she was afraid of heights and almost wet herself in fear. After grabbing Belle's underwear, Stas insisted on forcing her to negotiate. He was suspicious because clearly, she could use her spatial power to return home and put on other clothes, yet she still lingered here. Stas was certain this underwear was her treasure. In truth, what Belle was worried about was the diary in her pocket. If that guy read the love campaigns she had written, she would want to crawl into a hole forever and never come out. Stas noticed her strange behavior, especially when he touched the notebook, and immediately opened it and read it in front of Belle. Unable to endure any longer, Belle surrendered, swearing she would confess everything. Stas instinctively pulled her up, forgetting he was still holding her underwear, and everything was exposed. Poor Stas was then blasted to pieces by Belle until she emptied her ammo. Afterwards, Belle led him into the forest to chase after Nell and Fiamme. In truth, Belle felt a little sad because Stas was always Fiamme, while she was right there. She didn't want Stas to ignore her. Stas suddenly apologized to Belle because he realized he himself was the cause of all problems, telling her that if anything happened, she could vent her anger on him. For a so-called straightforward blockhead of a vampire, he actually managed to say something decent for once. A horrifying memory returned to Braz as he stood before the palace. Long ago, when he was still a kid, he had watched with his own eyes the silver wolf gouge out and pull the still beating heart from their father. Barroz arrived, accompanied by that four-eyed pervert, and she was exhausted. She absolutely hated those strange spectacled men. Police Chief Goyle, Barroz's boss, came to greet Braz. Braz had a good impression of the man with glasses. Goyle would escort Braz into the palace and warned him not to cause any trouble. Of course Braz would not. Recently he did not want to argue with the king. And besides, he still wore the collar Barroz had put on him that controlled his power, so what was there to fear? Fiamme and Nell finally rode the clouds home. Fiamme met Nell's steward who looked exactly like her own father. The meeting between Braz and the Great Wolf felt tense. The king at that moment was playing golf surrounded by a flock of celestial maidens. The Great Wolf ordered everyone to leave, leaving only Braz. Fiamme was changed into the flashy clothes Belle Chan's mother had chosen, and it was because of outfits like these that Belle never wanted to come home. Just then Belle brought Stas through the spatial gate. Seeing Stas's ragged appearance, Fiamme was extremely worried. Stas suddenly demanded they not act overly familiar right now. He and Belle were madly in love. Belle immediately shot back and headshot Stas, leaving the two frozen. Belle explained that perhaps their father already knew Belle and Stas were here. If their mother learned Stas had come to carry Fiamme away, things would be very troublesome. She needed a plan so no accidents would occur. At this point Belle probably vaguely understood some of the things Braz had told her. The plan was set. Anyone who objected would get a kick between the legs like Nell. The steward knocked and announced that the mistress wanted to see Fiamme. Stas wanted to go along but was flatly refused. When the mistress saw Fiamme, she immediately rushed to hug her as a mother reunited with a long-lost child. The three others peeking outside were surprised when the steward started talking with Stas. He said that Braz, his brother, and Mistress Nie-In of the Belle household always exchanged letters. Braz at that time was discussing a grave matter with the king. Recently, an underling doing secret work for him named Pantomime had disappeared, and coincidentally that man looked exactly like a Kim. Given that, Braz no longer hid anything, he admitted he had done away with Pantomime and deliberately leaked information so the king would summon him here. This was a declaration of war against the king over the time when their father died, and that man became the new king. However, Braz had no desire to sit on the throne himself. Instead, he planned to set in motion something he was creating, and of course that thing would be even more terrifying than the Great Wolf. The Great Wolf laughed derisively and gave him 1 week to bring anyone who could threaten him to the palace. He declared he would spit on them both. After that pronouncement, Burroughs locked Braz in a room. He pretended to have struck a nail and bit his hand so vampire blood gushed out like rain. Although he wanted to use magic to heal himself, the collar Burroughs had put on him prevented it. With no choice, Burroughs had to remove the collar. Of course, she fell into a trap and was drugged by Braz. When Goyle arrived, he only saw Burroughs lying in a pool of blood. Unwilling to accept his beloved subordinate being bullied by that scum Braz, Goyle immediately summoned monsters to chase after him. Braz, drained of magic because of the collar, needed to find refuge before being found, but he had not run far before Goyle caught up, kicked him into dozens of flips, and sent him tumbling down into the upper demon city. Braz fell into the home of a girl and borrowed her phone. Meanwhile, Stas's group had an audience with Belle's mother, who declared that Fujimi belonged to her and no one could take her away without her permission. If they wanted living blood, Stas could take it from her. Ni-in then produced a photograph of Belle as a child and explained the matter of doppelgangers. People say that if you meet someone who looks exactly like you, you will die. But in truth, it was not like that. Ni-in often traveled back and forth between the human world and the demon world to eat sweets, and at that time she had met Fujimi's mother, who was in fact her own doppelganger. When the two of them met, they were no longer two separate beings but fused into one. She became the mother of both children in both the human world and the demon world. Braz called Liz so the girl could bring him weapons, while he went to steal clothes from commoners and hide among the crowd. He did not understand why, even though his disguise was flawless, Goyle's demon could still recognize him. Braz was chased into a dead end. After a few exchanges, he realized in his current state he had no chance of winning. Goyle was furious that this trash had dared to mess with Burroughs. Braz tried to explain, but it was useless. He was smashed into the wall by Goyle's punch, coughing blood. Goyle wanted to know what he had said to the king and what his intentions were. Goyle had not expected that in such a short time Braz could see through his magic. Braz's skill was blood transfer. He could control and move it anywhere, which meant that even here his blood could still kill Burroughs. Goyle's strength was weakened by his worry and uncertainty. Anger was the fuel required for his power. Stas pondered the current situation. Although indeed Ni-in's blood and Fujimi's blood had something similar, he felt there was something only Fujimi possessed. Stas then asked if Fujimi had lost her virginity yet, but before he even finished, Belle hurled him into another space. Belle asked Fujimi how she felt about it. The suddenness left her unable to react. Perhaps this was why she had come to the demon world. Belle thought that once Fujimi was resurrected everything would be resolved. Perhaps she would forget everything here, but that way life would return to normal. At that moment Stas was clashing with a three-headed dragon, who proclaimed itself the creator of this land, none other than Belle's father. In an instant, the old man transformed into a middle-aged uncle wearing an undershirt. Stas's subordinates were still trying to contact him but failed. Instead, they encountered enormous trouble. A gang of ferocious demons suddenly surrounded them, demanding territory, led by none other than the otter Sabao. The uncle, upon meeting Stas, began bragging about his power, and just by his appearance Stas knew he was Belle's father. Nell had been born when Ni infused with a human body, but both children were precious angels to him. As for Fujimi, after discussing with Ni-in, they had agreed to raise the girl. Anyone who dared stop them would have to step over his corpse. While speaking, the uncle created a barrier around the island where the two stood. This was the first time Belle had brought a boy home. Normally the uncle would have welcomed him with open arms, but after hearing Stas was also pursuing Fujimi, things were different. Fujimi kept looking at the steward and thinking of her own father. Perhaps Ni-in had brought this uncle here to stop the two from meeting. Fujimi grew curious about the steward's relationship with her mother, and this question made Belle, sitting beside her, spit out her drink. The steward answered that they only had a master-servant relationship. But Belle's father thought otherwise. Fujimi's father, Yanagi, was the only man he feared. 14 years ago, they had sat down face to face and negotiated over who would stay by Ni-in's side. Ni-in had feelings for both men, truly the original trap girl, tormenting two men at once. They argued day after day yet never reached a conclusion. Hydra refused to return to the demon world alone without his wife. At that moment Belle revealed her magical ability when she opened a spatial gate that connected to the demon world. At such an age, to accomplish that was nothing less than a true prodigy. But if they had not been paying attention, Belle might have already brought Fujimi into the demon world. that showed how difficult it was to raise two children at once in the same environment. Yanagi accepted to raise Fujimi in the human world. In an ordinary environment, she did not need to know any of those special things. All Yanagi wanted was for the girl to grow up in a normal life. He resolved to raise Fujimi by his own strength. Even now, Hydra was still haunted by those words. Hydra had never heard such things in the demon world. This was the place where everyone only spoke about themselves. Yanagi had chosen his daughter's future over his own happiness. However, it was not that Yanagi wanted to abandon his wife. He had said that if Hydra ever made Nin unhappy, then Yanagi would not forgive him. Hydra had never feared anyone, but that serious threat made his skin crawl. It struck directly into Hydra's heart. He stepped forward and punched Stas so hard his front jaw almost flew off. Somehow Goyle and Braz had already reconciled and were sitting together chatting on chairs. Goyle sent his subordinates to check Beroza's condition to make sure she was safe before he stood up preparing to leave. Braz worried that some punishment would be handed down to him for causing such a noisy disturbance in the city. But the king had not yet issued any orders. Goyle very much wanted to know why the king was acting like that. Braz at that moment admitted that he had lied before about his relationship with the king. Even now he still remembered the terrifying memory of his father dying right in front of him. If there was anything he wanted to fix, then Braz wanted most to correct that. Stas at this time was being beaten to a pulp by his father-in-law. Hydra in truth also wanted to find a way to resurrect Fayumi and bring her back to normal life like Stas. However, he had heard from Stas's brother that the boy wanted to revive Fayumi in order to drink her blood. As a father, he could not allow that to happen. Killing Stas would be nothing but child's play. But cruelly, the only demon who could bring Fayumi back was none other than Stas. If he killed him now, it would not work, and if he let him live, it would not work either. Hydra wanted to know what Stas's true feelings for Fayumi were. Stas himself did not know what his feelings were. Indeed, at first he did want to drink her blood. But now he was not so sure. Hydra suddenly crushed the hidden camera so that Nin could not watch anymore. From now on it would be a conversation between two men. Hydra then took Stas to his secret base. Unbelievable that the legendary man's room was this small. The walls were covered with pictures of his wife. Hydra even sat playing games right in front of him. The two young men with precious jewels met and had much to talk about. Hydra was ready to let him and Fayumi go on the condition that he swallow this cursed herbal pill. Stas ate the thing and committed that if he broke the oath he would surely die. Hydra required Stas to obey Fayumi in two cases. First, once he left the place together with Fayumi, he had to have her permission and go only when she agreed. Second, if he wanted to drink Fayumi's blood, then he must have her permission and consent before drinking. At these two conditions, Stas hesitated, not daring to agree. Just waiting for that, Hydra stuffed the herbal pill into his mouth. Stas, as if seeing the light of the other world. That angel forced him to fulfill the vow, otherwise he would be held down and violated from behind. Stas gradually sank into slumber. In truth, this vow game was only fake, made up by the old man. That herbal pill was only a sleeping bun. Stas disappeared for a long time, so Fayumi was a bit curious about his whereabouts. Belle took the opportunity of the two being alone to ask what feelings Fayumi had for Stas. Fayumi also did not know what her feelings were, only that she cared a lot about Stas, especially since he always helped her with everything. When Stas opened his eyes, he already saw himself and Fayumi near the exit gate. Hydra had gone to meet Nin and explained everything. Sabao at this moment was plotting to seize Stas's territory while he was not there. The snowman had stopped him, but he would not listen. Braz was frozen by Goyle after nagging too much. Just then Liz came to successfully rescue her brother right in front of Goyle. Fayumi at that time was changing clothes and was suddenly teleported here. So she was only wearing underwear, running around in front of him like that. Stas took off his shirt to give to her. Hydra at that time was having to explain to Nin the mess he had caused. Fayumi kept having the feeling that Stas was strange, as if he was trying hard to act like a good person. Stas's underlings were struggling to fight the demons. Even though they were ganged up on, they eventually still claimed victory. The wolf was still going around fighting everywhere. At that moment he received a letter from the High Demon. Stas conversed with Fayumi about the things he had been through. If she truly wanted to return to life, then a villain like Stas wanted to become her hero. Fayumi indeed really wanted to return, but she also did not want to forget everyone she missed and worried about her father, so she should not have such wavering feelings. Stas would take her out of here if she was fine with it. Fayumi was so surprised that it took her a long time before she dared to say she was fine. Hydra observed from afar and was very satisfied that he had fulfilled his promise. Not long after, he realized his wound did not heal at all. Meanwhile, Fayumi seemed to be in danger, because on the other side was the southern demon world, a place connected to the spatial highway, opening a new path in their journey. However, instead of using the transportation service to return to the eastern demon world area, Stas decided to launch a surprise attack. Because for a hero, sitting still waiting was not an option. Their ultimate target was the Acropolis of the demon world, where Stas's brother reigned, and then the objectives were clearly determined. marking the moment when the Fearless Squad, true vampire hunters, awaited their chance to shine. At the same time, a message from Nain came, revealing that Stas and the girl had escaped. This aroused suspicion within the Fearless Squad, a group of vampire hunters who had never hunted a single vampire, making them wonder if their leader was a fraud. However, another member gave a more positive perspective, saying that the reason no opponent dared to challenge them was because they were too strong, even confidently claiming that they could definitely defeat a vampire. This prospect ignited ambition in them, because if successful they would become top demons at the Demon World Acropolis, regardless of whether the rumors of their strength were true or not. Therefore, they decided to seize this opportunity. Although this time the target was a real vampire, meaning they had almost no hope of victory, yet their leader turned despair into motivation, asserting that this was their chance to become famous, and afterward the whole squad set out together to prove that their vampire hunter title was not just empty words. Meanwhile, Sam, another member of the squad, was boasting about his expensive watch, emphasizing that good things always cost more, for example some item he was keeping. But then another member felt sleepy and decided to take a nap, making the leader extremely disappointed and decide he would handle everything himself. At that time in his head arose thoughts about the carelessness of his team members, about the name tags he had stayed up all night making for everyone, and about how he could only make them listen when he activated his ability, something he did not want but was forced to do because this time the target was a vampire, requiring utmost focus. However, it turned out that was just a staged act so that their leader could scout alone, because the other members knew he would not do it if there was another choice. Nevertheless, they still considered him their leader. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Stas and Fayumi were discussing keeping secrets when in the territory of other demons. However, Stas thought they needed to act wild to blend in, even giving Fayumi a toy gun without bullets, and tying a rope to her so he could know her location at all times. This made Fayumi feel like she was about to be sold, but Stas reassured her that he would never do that. Meanwhile, the Fearless Squad had found their target. Stas and Fayumi were eating canned beans together, a food that the leader of the Fearless Squad hated, making him even more furious at Stas. As for Fayumi, although she did not like beans, she was too shy to say it out loud. Instead, she made another request, which was to suck a little of Stas's blood. However, Stas refused, explaining that she still had some blood left from the last time and should focus on finishing her can of beans. This created an awkward atmosphere between the two, and then a strange cat appeared, striking up a conversation with the leader of the Fearless Squad, revealing that it had a good item, catnip, an addictive substance, making the leader realize that Fayumi was being controlled by Stas this way, and he decided to intervene. But just as he was about to activate his ability, he suddenly felt a strange sensation. Meanwhile, Stas was explaining to Fayumi about her condition, that her magic power was gradually weakening after each time she received magic power from him, causing the interval between each replenishment to become shorter. That was why he did not want her to suck his blood unless it was an emergency. At this moment, Fayumi realized her body was gradually disappearing and she began to panic. Stas scolded her for not saying it sooner, demanding she must express her desperation more clearly, that she must show him her desire to be revived. And then he held out his finger, allowing her to suck his blood. However, she sucked too much, making Stas stop her out of concern for her condition, realizing she could not hold out for long, and he must do something. Meanwhile, the leader of the Fearless Squad, after a night of indulgence with catnip and losing track of his target, returned to his team and made up a story about having attacked and almost defeated the target alone. However, the other members exposed his lie, leaving him extremely humiliated. Afterward, Stas and Fayumi continued their journey, and Fayumi still felt embarrassed about what had happened the previous day. But Stas did not care at all, saying it was a necessary part of her revival process. And then they saw a cute kitten. Fayumi immediately wanted to pet it. Although Stas warned her of the danger of cats in the demon world, she did not listen. And then the cat transformed into the leader of the Fearless Squad, revealing it was only a trap, that he was not actually a cat, though his behavior was entirely cat-like. Afterward, Stas, feeling annoyed, attacked him. However, the leader of the Fearless Squad easily dodged the attack, revealing that this was a one-sided hunt, a vampire hunt. And then the entire Fearless Squad appeared, surrounding Stas and Fayumi. Stas, noticing the squad's delay, decided to handle everything himself, while the Fearless Squad was busy arguing among themselves, giving Stas and Fayumi a chance to escape. However, the leader of the Fearless Squad had already anticipated Stas's intention, revealing that his ability was mind reading, allowing him to read every movement of his opponent as long as he had a part of the victim inside him. And another member of the squad, Roy, had the ability Chat Room, allowing him to share the information he read with the entire team. And then they revealed that one of them had the ability to kill Stas, and then they began their attack. Stas easily dodged all of their strikes and started mocking them for their weakness. However, they were unfazed, and then they suddenly disappeared along with Fayumi, making Stas panic in terror and realize that his wound was not healing at all. Meanwhile, Fayumi was trapped in another space, and the leader of the Fearless Squad told her he would release her after they eliminated Staz. Fayumi tried screaming for help, but it was useless. Her voice could not reach Staz, who was desperately searching for her. Meanwhile, Staz, having lost too much blood, was gradually weakening and at risk of dying. And then the Fearless Squad appeared to finish him off. They had assumed that vampires were nothing special. However, Staz, in his despair, remembered Fayumi and found the strength to stand up, astonishing the Fearless team. And then Staz realized that in order to restore his power, he could absorb the magic energy of his enemies. Afterward, he easily defeated them and demanded to know where they had hidden Fayumi. And after much evasion, they finally revealed her location. Staz successfully rescued Fayumi, and Fayumi realized that the gun Staz had given her actually had real bullets. And then, Staz decided to commandeer the Fearless team's spaceship to reach the Acropolis of the demon world. He explained that infiltrating there was very difficult, but with this spaceship, they could illegally enter. Meanwhile, on the way, they were detected by a radar system, and a gatekeeper with crab hands was ready to welcome them. And then Staz and Fayumi jumped off the spaceship. Staz reassured Fayumi that he would never let her go again. Meanwhile, the Fearless team, after letting Staz and Fayumi escape, realized that their plan had failed, that the gatekeeper they trusted was actually a fool. Meanwhile, Staz and Fayumi successfully landed on the Acropolis of the demon world, marking a new chapter in their journey.